Hi, Computer Science 2 class. It's Mrs. Miskin. I'm going to go over lesson 15 in code.org, and we're going to go through every single step. If you're having any trouble and need to use this video as a reference at home, then go ahead and pull it up, and as you follow along, you should be able to get that lesson completed correctly. So I will go ahead and share my screen. We'll go through lesson 15. This is on velocity. Screen 1 just gives you an overview of the new code blocks that we're going to be looking at: rotation speed, velocity x, and velocity y. So if you'll hit continue, the next screen will be a video. I won't play that for you. You can play that on your own in your screen and then come back. So previously, when we want to move with our sprites, we've used the counter pattern. Something like sprite x equals sprite x plus 1 or minus 1, depending on which direction we wanted to go. But movement can use a velocity block instead, which basically has the same information as that counter pattern previously. So instead of using the counter pattern to move, we're going to now use velocity x or y. Okay, screen number 3, velocity x. One way to move sprites in Game Lab is with the counter pattern. Drag a sprite velocity x block directly below where your sprite is created. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and looks like I might have done this one just a little bit. So here's the velocity x. It's in your sprites. You see velocity x and velocity y. So go ahead and hit run. Okay, my fish is going backwards. Okay, so let's put the number 1 in here. Okay, now it's going forwards, which positive means to the right then. It's going very, very slow. So let's maybe set it to 4, reset, and run. Okay, that moves a little bit better. All right, so this one is just getting a feel for what direction your sprite will go to and what happens. Okay, so all you need is this block here on line 3, the velocity x with the fish. You don't need to change anything down below. And I'm just going to double check my instructions. Everything's good. So I can hit finish. Okay, here is a feather sprite that should be floating down the screen. If velocity x makes the sprite move to the right, what will make the feather move down? Okay, so we're going to use the opposite coordinate. We want velocity y instead of x because x will go left and right, y will go up and down. Okay, so let's just change the sprite to feather, sprite name, and then let's put in a number. Let's start with 3 and see which direction that goes in. Okay, so that's right. Coming from top to bottom would be a positive number. If I did negative, it would move up. So I'm just going to make that adjustment and show you really quick. If I hit negative, okay, it goes up. Feathers don't really go up, so we want to change that back to a positive. Okay, so that's right. Let's go ahead and go on. Okay, screen number 5, rotation speed. We know how to make the sprite spin by using the rotation block, but using the counter pattern with that. So now we can use just rotation speed to make something rotate by a certain number of degrees. So we're going to use the rotation speed block. It is also in the sprites toolbox. So drag that out. Our sprite is a sun. And in the instructions, it says make the sun rotate by 3 degrees. And remember these little links here that say show me where. If you click on that, it will tell you where to put that block. So we're going to say 3. Now when we run, the sun is spinning. Okay, number 6, controlling speed. We use rotation speed outside the draw loop to make your sprite rotate when the program started. We can use it inside the draw loop to change during the game, such as if a user presses a button or something on the mouse, or when it's told to stop. So in our instructions, look at the if statement inside the draw loop that checks whether the spacebar has been pressed. So if I hit this, show me where, my little instruction will come up here and point to where I need to look for that if statement. And I can see that it is right here starting on line 8. Okay, use the rotation speed block to make the color wheel start spinning when the user presses the spacebar. Okay, so rather than putting it up here, if we put it up above the draw loop, it will just start as soon as you hit run. So we want it to start conditionally. So when a certain condition has been met, we're going to use this wheel rotation speed equals. So you grab the rotation speed block in here, change it to wheel because that's what we've got, and then give it a number. And now when I hit run, nothing happens until I hit space, and then it spins. Okay, number 7. Your code before the draw loop sets up the beginning of the game. So we just talked about that. Your code inside the draw loop controls how the game will change while it's being played. In this game, the helicopter bot starts off at the bottom of the screen, but when the space key is pressed, it flies up. So let's just check that to be sure. Okay, and if I hit space, nothing happens yet because I haven't done it. Okay, so here's our flybot just sitting at the bottom. Use an if statement inside the draw loop to check when the spacebar is pressed. All right, so let's grab under control. We need an if statement. We put that after our background. Okay, so our condition is if the spacebar is pressed. So we want if key down is space. And then we want to add the velocity Y block to make the sprite fly up when the user presses the spacebar. So we need velocity Y from our sprites toolbox. And we'll change that to fly up. Make sure you spell it correctly. And let's see, so flying up, is that going to be negative or positive? When we use the feather and had a positive number, it came from the top down. So if we want to go up, it needs to be negative. So let's try -3 just to start. And we can adjust that from here. So now when I hit space, it goes up. And because I hit key down, not key went down, it will keep going. Okay, so I can go ahead and hit finish on that one. Okay, number 8, changing velocity with position. Okay, so if our sprite keeps moving even after the condition is true, so we only had to press the key once to launch it, and it kept flying. So let's see, this one is just a prediction. Look at the if statements that check the sprite's position and set its velocity. Decide what it's going to do, write it in the block, and then you can hit run. So I've already written something in here, so then the run will come up. So once you've written something, you can hit run, and this one is not something you have to do something for. At least with your code. Just write something and just what you think it's going to do. So read through the code. If you look here, the comments will probably tell you what's going to happen also. Okay, let's go on to number 9. All right, as you saw in the last level, you can change the sprite's velocity with multiple if statements. This fish has 3 different types of movement, each controlled by its own if statement. So let's just look at that first. We have an if statement if the fish X is less than 0. So that would be if it's off the left side of the screen. If the key down is right, it's changing the animation. And then if the fish X is greater than 400, so if it reaches the right side, then it's going to change its animation to a different sprite. Okay, so we're going to add these movements. So number one, if the user presses the right arrow key, move the fish to the right. So let's find where the right arrow key gets pressed in the if statement. If key down is right, fish swims right. So what are we going to need to do to make the fish start swimming again to the right? Okay. We're going to use our velocity, an x, because we're on the left or right plane. Coordinate, sorry. Okay, so fish is the name of our sprite. And let's see, if we want it to swim right, do we need a positive or a negative number? I'm going to put in a positive number, and let's see if that works. Okay, so here's the fish. When I hit the right arrow key, it does move to the right. Okay, so that part's good. If the fish gets to the right-hand side of the screen, move the fish to the left. All right, so we do have an if statement that checks if the fish reaches the right edge. So it's this one right here. If fish.x is greater than 400. Okay, we want to move the fish to the right. So we're going to change its velocity then to the opposite. So we set it at 4. Let's go ahead and change that to -4 and see if that works. Okay, so I'm hitting the right arrow, it goes to the edge, it flips, so it faces a different direction, change that animation, and then it did change the velocity. All right, so let's get to the last instruction. If the fish gets to the left-hand side of the screen, stop the fish. Okay, we don't want it to keep going back and forth in this instance. We want it to stop. So we do have an if statement that checks if fish X is less than 0. So that means it's over on the left edge. We want it to stop. So here's the animation change, that's okay. But we want the velocity X then for the fish to be 0. Okay, 0 makes it stop. If we were to put in a number, it would keep going. All right, so let's reset, run again. Hitting the right arrow key, it goes to the right and flips, then it goes back to the left. Okay, and it stops, but it's also changed the animation, so now it's just pointing there. Okay, that's great, that's what we want to see. Okay, screen 10 is just a review of our velocity movements with 3 different examples here. Okay, so the pig is moving across the screen, so that's using the X. The rabbit is moving straight down, so that's going to use the Y. And then the hippo is moving in a diagonal motion, so it's using both X and Y. So let's look up at the code here. So here's our hippo. Velocity X is 2, velocity Y is 2. Remember, it needs both of them to go in a diagonal position. The rabbit has velocity Y, and the pig has velocity X. Okay, let's go ahead and continue. Okay, and I am just going to reset my screen just to be sure. I think I did some of the instructions in going over just the overview. All right, you now have all the blocks you need to make your sprite jump. The sprite should jump up if it's on the ground and the user presses the up key, then should start moving back down when it reaches the top of its jump. Okay, so find the if statement that checks whether the sprite is on the ground. All right, so let's look at that first. If frog is on the ground, the comments are really helpful here. If frog.y is greater than 324, okay? And the up key is pressed. We want the frog to jump up. Okay, so to get it to move up, we're going to use a velocity y. And we want it to move up, so it's actually going to be a negative number. So let's just start at -3. And we'll test it. Okay, I hit the up arrow and the frog goes up and up and up. Okay, it's kind of slow. So I think I'm going to change that number to maybe be -5. Okay, so that's the first instruction. Make the frog stop moving otherwise. So otherwise is our else statement. We want the frog to stop moving. So we learned in the fish example earlier that when we put our velocity to 0, it stops. Okay, so frog.velocity y stops. Let's go ahead and hit run. Sorry, hit up, and it goes up. Okay, we'll get to that then. Okay, now we need to check whether the frog has reached its highest point. So let's scroll down and find that if statement. If the frog gets high enough, send it back down. Okay, so we're going to add the if statement in this one. In control, let's go ahead and grab an if. If the frog gets high enough, send it back down. So in order to check whether it's high enough, we're going to need to look at its y position, okay, because it's coming up. So when it gets to a certain point, let's look at the y, maybe about 10, okay? So I'm going to go grab a math block because this is a Boolean expression we're comparing. If, let's see, less than, we're going to grab less than because if it's 10 or under, the frog is at the very top and we want to send it back down. And we can adjust this number if we need to. So I need the frog's y position. And let's just put 10 in here. We can adjust that if we need to. Send it back down. So instead of going up, we want it to come back down. We need to reverse the velocity. And why? Because it is on the up and down axis. So frog velocity, and let's scroll up and see what we had it at. We set it at -5 to go up. So we're going to set it at +5 to come down. Okay, let's just check that. Hitting the up, it's going up. Okay, comes back down, and then it stops when it gets back. Okay, so our else statement then is working. But the frog went just a little bit higher than I wanted to. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to 20, run it again. Hit the up arrow. Okay, still not quite, but not too bad. I'm going to just change it one more time to 30. And that should be pretty close. We want to kind of make it look like the frog is hitting the top of the screen and coming down. Okay, that's a little bit better. Okay, and then it does stop. All right, so that's all of the instructions for 11. Let's go ahead and finish that one. Okay, now we need to add the mushroom. Use the velocity X block to make the mushroom move left across the screen. Now here's a hint. The mushroom should start moving at the very beginning of the game and never change. So should it be inside or outside of the draw loop? Should be outside of the draw loop if we want it to start as soon as the program is run and not based on a condition. So we will need velocity X for the mushroom. So right up here, the first few lines create the variable mushroom. So let's just go ahead and add it right there. And we want velocity X because it's going to move left and right. Mushroom. And let's give it a speed of, let's see, positive or negative if we want it to move left. Negative. Let's set it at -4 and just see what that looks like. So now when I hit run, the mushroom just moves. Okay, and it gets to the end and it doesn't come back. We'll do that in another step. Okay, but that was kind of slow. Let's move that up a little bit. I'm going to actually change it to -6. Try it again. Okay, that's a little bit better. Okay, the game will be more fun if the frog can jump more than once. You can make the mushroom loop by checking whether it's moved past the left edge and move it back to the right edge when it has. Okay, so find the if statement that checks whether the mushroom has passed the left edge. You can hit the show me where, or we'll just read through our code. So we're looking for an if statement. And here's the comments. If the mushroom has gone off the left edge. Okay, now the next instruction, use the sprite X block to set the mushroom's position back to the right edge if it has. So we just want to change the X position because we already have the velocity going and that will keep going. So mushroom X should be, what's our X coordinate on the right edge? Okay, so 400. Probably already knew that. Okay. And that's all the instructions for this one. So let's go ahead and hit run. And my mushroom is looping. Okay. And when I hit the up arrow, my frog moves too. And then comes back down. Okay, great. That's all you have to do for lesson 15. I'm going to go ahead and hit finish. Okay, if you have any other questions beyond that, please let me know. Otherwise, you can follow along in other lessons. Thank you.